I actually have to warn you because I usually cannot even tell anybody about this dream without having to cry.
Right. Yeah.
Because it was not because it's my grandfather and because he's dead, but more about
The feeling.
intensity of the
Yeah.
feeling. I'm
Mm-hmm.
getting there. So he was sitting there in the armchair, and he was aging. So he was sitting there as a young, handsome man, like younger than I had known him, right? A very
Wow.
young. And then he was aging in front of me, and he was getting older and older and older, and then he basically died in front of my eyes.
Welcome to the Soulful Reminders podcast, your go-to spot for spiritual inspiration, growth, and connection to your true self. I'm your host, Emily Cady. Each week, I invite inspiring guests to share their unique spiritual lessons and insights, helping us all remember who we are at our core. This is more than just a podcast. It's a vibrant community where we'll explore how to unlock our full potential and embrace our essence in every aspect of our life. Life can get busy and overwhelming, but here, we focus on those soulful nudges that remind us of our incredible power. Whether you're seeking wisdom, a bit of encouragement, or simply a moment of inspiration, you're in the perfect place. Grab your favorite drink, get cozy. Let's dive into this journey together because you deserve to shine your brightest. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you're tuning in from today. I am so excited to have my dear friend Dorothee from Germany join us on our Soulful Reminders podcast. She is super fascinating. I love that. Dorothee, one, I'm so grateful you're joining me today. I'm so grateful you are a new friend in my world. There's so much value you have already brought to my life in the short time that I've known you. And I'm absolutely 100% excited for our audience today to hear your story and your background and what you bring to the table to help people out. So thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me, Emily. I'm so honored to be here.
Dorothy, your background is super fascinating to me. You're a psychologist, you're very analytical, you understand the brain, and just you have this linear way of doing life, which is totally opposite of me because I am like so non-linear. And I love to learn from people like you because you didn't bring in a different perspective to me. And I just would love for you to share a little bit of how did you, as this educated psychologist, you're an analytical person, and how did you step into a spiritual journey? Because I know it's a little challenging for people that are very analytical to accept the spiritual side.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you could say as a psychologist, you could say I was always interested in consciousness and the brain and how we behave as human beings, right? So it might not be as large of a bridge to between these two worlds. But still, I hadn't anything to do with spirituality. I didn't believe necessarily in past lives or guides or the spiritual world or anything. So my soul really had to basically put me into situations, really in your face situations that made me wonder, that made me ask questions, that made me basically question my worldview and eventually throw it all away, my worldview, and just come
Wow.
up with a new one.
So it
Um,
all completely had to, like, your foundation of how you knew life to be had to completely come crumble down.
Sort of, yes. I mean, I could say I always had sort of an openness to things or an intellectual curiosity, but it was an intellectual curiosity. For example, I got a little bit interested in hypnosis and, past life regressions. And I thought, okay, that is interesting. Like, how do people know? Because people who have experienced it, they say, I know that I had this past life. I know that what I've seen in the regression is true. And I was always wondering, how can they know, right? How can it possibly be that they know that? And so so yeah, I had a curiosity maybe and an openness, like, but I always thought we will never know potentially in our lifetimes if there is something that is beyond death or so yeah. I was skeptical. Let's put it that way.
Uh-huh. And so what was the turning point for you to go from being skeptical to going, okay, there is a knowing, there is something more than just this life that we're living?
Actually, it was very gradual for me. So there was not one turning point, but there was like many, like almost mystical experiences that my soul had to put me through to basically initiate me into this state of wonder, into like helping me ask the right questions, really. So I don't know. I could tell you some of these situations
Yes,
if
I would
you're
love
interested.
to. I would love
Yeah.
to hear them.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see. Like, I think maybe one of the first ones that were really that I couldn't deny that there's something going on that is beyond my current understanding was it was on holiday in Thailand. And I was on holiday with a friend of mine, and it was at night. We were in the hotel room, and it was dark. It wasn't pitch black dark, but the moon was shining. It was still quite bright, so you could see, but it was, sort of dark. And we were going to bed. And I have to say right up front that we didn't drink anything, we didn't take any drugs. I was not dehydrated or something, but these were thoughts that were going through my mind, right? So I was thinking like, is everything okay with me? Am I healthy? But I was, and I was sober and everything. So I was going to bed, and like my friend was going to bed, and we were lying down, and then I was like, I think my friend was falling asleep, and then I looked over to the side of the room where my friend was lying in bed, or so I thought, because the next moment I saw her standing next to the bed, and I was like, okay, why is she standing there, right? I mean, is she maybe she wants to get something to drink, or I don't know, is she sleepwalking or whatever, right? And because I wasn't hearing anything and I hadn't heard her getting up or something. And she was just standing there. And then I noticed she was standing there really still. So she wasn't moving at all. And I was like, that is weird, right? And then, I was looking to the bed, and I saw her shape under the
Her
blanket.
actual
I was
physical
like,
body. Uh-huh.
so I wasn't sure
Uh-huh.
at that moment. And then, the next, I think, 2 minutes or so, it felt like 15 minutes or so, but it probably wasn't that long. I could observe my brain thinking and trying to make sense of this, because she was standing there, she was lying there, she was standing there, she was lying there, and I was looking back and forth, and I was like, and my brain couldn't make any sense of it. And that's when panic kicked in. I was panicking, and I was like shouting out her name, and I was like, Julia, right? Because her name was Julia. And then like her in that moment, she slowly woke up, and she said like something, what's up, right? And in that moment she woke up, the figure just disappeared.
It went back into
So
her body.
exactly. So I mean, today I know what has happened, that I probably have seen her light body in full, you
Yes.
know
Come
standing
out.
in front of
Yeah.
me.
Can you explain to our audience what really happened? Because some people may not know that's listening.
I think what happens is that at night when we go to sleep, we basically go out of body with our light body.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
think that's what I've seen.
Yes. She was astral
Yeah,
projecting. Hmm.
exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
And it was,
Absolutely. And that's, it's interesting. And a lot of people do this and they don't even realize that they astral project in the middle of the night, but they are going out of
absolutely.
body and
Yeah.
having different experiences and whatnot.
Yeah. But
I think
if
that's
you
neat.
have this falling experience when you like in your dream, that sometimes when you're getting back into your body, I
Right.
think,
Yes.
right? This falling
Yes.
experience, you know that too. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a weird feeling.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And it's you coming back. And it's not necessarily every night.
No, no, not absolutely not. No. Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you process that after seeing it? Because you went into full panic mode. Okay, so you're in full panic mode. How do I mean that it can jar our entire world when we have these experiences.
Well, the interesting thing is, I couldn't sleep afterwards. It really took me some time. I talked to my friend about it. I mean, she's also open about these things, but she didn't really, have an explanation. And I didn't really continue thinking about it that much. I actually forgot about it, like, believe it or not. I mean, that's why, my soul had to really put me into several, of these kinds of experiences because, I don't know, I probably avoided, dealing with it altogether. I mean, I found it
Yeah.
fascinating and I found it
Right.
really interesting, but I thought, okay, maybe it was just a one time thing. I cannot really explain it. I might have heard of the term light body at that point already. So because I had this openness, yeah, but I was like, I don't know, really. I don't really understand it. So I didn't really think much of it, right?
It's interesting how our mind can protect us in that way.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
you didn't fixate on it.
No, I did eventually start because that's when a friend of me gave me a book by Robert Monroe. I don't know if you know Robert Monroe.
Mm-hmm.
He has this guy who had a spontaneous out of body experience, and then he started investigating it, and he
Yes, I
has,
have a client that is studies him.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So he has founded an institute later on. He's an
Hmm.
amazing person, and I read the book by him, and that was also part of this whole process because then I said, okay. And he was talking about this light body thing. I was still not fully believing it, but I couldn't help but think, well, this person is genuine, right? Because I looked up videos of Robert Monroe and I heard him talk to feel into. I intuitively felt into this person, and I said, like, this person is genuine, really. He's not telling lies. So he really has experienced something. And he has, in this book, he described a process how you can actually practice having an out of body experience. And I
Uh-huh.
tried
Yep.
to do this. I tried to do this, and I almost got there. I almost got there. I had this buzzing in the ears and
Hmm.
like these paralysis things. But then I had like a not so great experience because, back then I wasn't connected with myself. I wasn't connected with my truth, with my needs, with my emotions, with my heart, even. I had a lot of fears. I had a lot of anxiety. I had depression. I was, all that jazz. And so I actually practiced that. But then, a friend of mine, like my flatmate at the time, she was watching a horror movie in the evening, and I
Mm.
watched parts of it. I didn't want to watch the whole thing, but I watched parts of it. And the next morning, I woke up to an almost out of body experience, but I mixed it up with the horror movie, which was really bad because I was panicking again, and I was nowhere ready. And today, I know that if I had going astral projected in that moment, I probably would have created like, hell on earth, like because I would have created my own fears, like full on in the astral world, right? So
This is really an important point that you're making because your vibration was low. You said
yes,
you didn't know who you were. You
not at
were
all.
depressed. You were battling
Yes,
with depression, yes, and you would just watched a low vibration, dense movie, the horror movie, right?
yeah,
And then
yeah,
you go to bed. That is a recipe for a disaster to
exactly.
do any kind of spiritual work because now
Yes,
you're going to be working with the lower level entities and
yeah.
dimensions rather than the higher levels. When you astral travel or project, you want to go up. You want to travel into the higher vibrations and frequencies.
At least you want to be in a stable position to actually play with these things, right? And I
Right.
didn't know that
It's
back then.
super dangerous.
So,
I just want
yeah.
to touch on this because I had this experience too in my 20s. I was like 18, 19, 20, and I had experiences with I was going to school, university, and massage school at the same time. And I was, exploring my spiritual growth, yet I was very low level vibration because I was overworked. I was exhausted. I was like just trying to get through life. And I was having entities totally like taunt me and just do things in the middle of the day or in the middle of the night. They would come and turn on my TV or do random stuff. And if you're not protected and you're not at the right vibration, you really don't want to go into the spiritual realm.
Yes, I totally agree.
And I don't mean to like hound this, it's just to protect people because it
Yeah,
can be really
absolutely.
scary.
And like for me, spirituality is not about, necessarily playing with things that maybe shouldn't at this point, but it's all good to be curious, right?
It's great to be curious, but it's to
But
approach it with a reverence.
yes, exactly. That's the right word.
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely. I want to point on one more time. I was gonna astro project one night, and I was gonna go work with Archangel Raphael and I
Mhm.
or Raziel. And I was I did the ritual of everything that I wanted to do so I could work with him that night. And three times that night, this is probably like 6 to 9 months ago, three times that night a spirit kept touching me, physically touching me on my hip right as I was going into it because I was not mentally in the right place like you.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
I thought I
Yeah.
was, but something was not in alignment. And so I kept getting woken up so I wouldn't go. And so our spirit guides will also protect us, which is amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah. So definitely I was protected from, going out of body in that moment. Definitely. Yeah.
I love that. Yes, I love that.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. I find that super an important point and in your experience and sharing that.
Yeah. So yeah, that was one of the first moments, but it wasn't the last one. I think another really important one later on was and that was actually a dream, but it was a very clear dream. Like you sometimes have these dreams where you actually, have
The lucid, like a lucid dream.
it wasn't lucid. I wasn't aware that I was
Okay.
dreaming, but it was
Uh-huh.
very clear. It was almost,
Like you were in it.
getting there. Yeah. But I think it was in that dream, I was in the house of my grandparents. And my grandparents were already dead at that point. Like my grandfather has died like maybe 2 years before I had this dream. And I was upstairs. That's where we stayed when we usually would, visit my grandparents. And it was like I knew the house was empty, no one was living there anymore, and they weren't there anymore. But there was interestingly a glass of water still standing there, so as if someone was there actually. And so I was like, oh, getting curious, and so I went downstairs where my grandparents usually stayed, and I went into the living room and I found my grandfather sitting in his armchair in the living room, and I was like, oh, he's there. Yeah, it was so interesting, and he was sitting there, and then something interesting happened because my grandfather um, and I actually have to warn you because I usually cannot even tell anybody about this dream without having to cry.
Right. Yeah.
Because it was not because it's my grandfather and because he's dead, but more about
The feeling.
intensity of the
Yep.
feeling. I'm getting there. So he was sitting there in the armchair, and he was aging. So he was sitting there as a young, handsome man, like younger than I had known him, right? And very
Wow.
young. And then he was aging in front of me, and he was getting older and older and older, and then he basically died in front of my eyes. So he basically, the whole body dissolved in front of my eyes, but there was light coming from inside the body and it was such an intense light. And I knew it was the light of his soul, the essence of his soul that was coming through, because there was such an intense wave of love that was coming through that touch.
Wow. I
It
have
was,
goosebumps all over my body.
yeah. It was so amazing. And I was like, you could almost not stand the intensity of his soul's essence. And he showed me his soul basically. And he showed me that is what the soul looks like. And, in his waking state, because he is, he's German, like I am German, and he was in the Second World War. He fought at the Russian front. So he was
Wow.
totally, he had PTSD. So when he came back, and he was, he wasn't,
So traumatic.
a happy like person, right? So he
Mhm.
was like a good-hearted person, but not, happy and joyful. When I and he radiated this intense love, and I knew everything was all right, and I knew that's who he really is, right? And he showed me that. And and the interesting thing, later on, we sat on a wall next to each other, and he was just talking to me. He was asking me how I was, and it was just this beautiful moment of reconnection with my grandfather that I lost 2 years ago, and 2 years earlier. And that's basically when he came in as my guide.
Oh,
And that's when because obviously I went through a long healing journey, also healing all this ancestral trauma, because I work with constellation, family constellation work, which is all about healing trauma and old, victim perpetrator dynamics. And so I had to go through a lot of ancestral healing as well, because I'm of German descent, probably. But I mean, everyone has it. But yeah. And so he was coming in basically to start this work, I think. Yeah. And to accompany me on this work. Yeah.
what a beautiful story. Oh,
Yeah.
incredible. So let me ask you, is your grandfather still with you as
No,
a
he
guide?
isn't.
As a
Oh,
guide.
as a guide, yeah.
Okay, so he's still
He's not as present as anymore, but
okay.
occasionally he will come through. Yes.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And so he helped guide you through the ancestral healing because
Yeah.
he probably needed it himself with what he
Yes.
had to experience on the
Yeah.
front lines right there. That's just
Yeah.
horrific.
Because I think like a lot of my like journey was a journey of empowerment, really. Because I think especially in Germany, people do not want to have anything to do with power anymore, because we have seen firsthand what a misuse of power really means.
Mhm.
And so I know
We're
you're
seeing it over here in the United States.
as well. Yes, of course. I mean, we all know that, right? But
History repeats itself. We just have a hard time learning sometimes until we experience it.
yeah,
Mhm.
very true, very true. But I think there is a little bit of, Germans also don't want to have anything to do with spirituality. Like, this is a, very broad sweeping statement, but it's a general statement. Of course, there
Right.
are others as well. But as a tendency, we like science, but we do not like spirituality. So yeah, but I think it's a big misunderstanding of what power really is, because it has nothing to do with dominance if you're in your true power. And but I think, like my grandfather, because I could feel it, I could feel into his essence while he was, still alive and in the war. This huge feeling of disempowerment and helplessness, seeing everything that was happening around him and having the feeling, I can't do anything about it. I can't do anything about it. And it must have been horrible, right, to see that. And, history repeats itself. So I think
Right.
many people today
Are feeling this way.
are feeling this way. Yes.
So this is so important, this conversation right now. What did you learn from your grandfather in his afterlife and working with him on how and the disempowerment, and how did you get some like insights on how to navigate this specific time that we're living in?
Lots of things. I think the main thing I learned is you have to find out who you are and your
Mm,
purpose and what you can bring to the table, because that's the most important thing you can do, because there's something you can do to contribute to this, right?
yes. Yeah.
And that is a journey of empowerment in itself,
I,
if
I
you
I
know who
just
you
have to
are.
stop you really quickly because
Okay.
literally right before jumping on. Now, this is Valentine's Day, right? Um, and I was texting my mom and my sisters, and we're wishing each other happy Valentine's Day. And we're like just talking. And one of my sisters goes, you know what? It's all about just being enjoying the moment or something, just because of what we're currently going through. And we weren't talking politics or anything. It was just about, just enjoying the moment. And right then I heard my guide say, it's learning. She's right. It's about you are being forced to learn how to be in the present moment right now. And you can only do that by connecting with who you are. And so
Yes.
I find it super fascinating that, and I'm about to publish this reel when we're done interviewing with this interview. I'm going to publish this reel, and it's all about us really understanding who we are at our core and accepting us so that we can be in the present moment and have that power and not
Yes.
give it away to people on the outside that don't care. Ultimately people don't care about anyone, how do I rephrase this? Because it's not coming out right. People, we focus on giving our power away to people because of fear of judgment, right? Or how
Mhm.
to fit in. Yet, really, ultimately, they're concerned about themselves, and
Yeah.
we should not be giving away our power.
Mhm. Not and also not giving our power away to people who are allegedly in power, right?
Yes.
Because that's what we do as well. And
Mhm.
then, and then we lose hope if it's not the right person from our perspective, right? That is in power right now, and then we lose hope that that this person can actually dictate of how our life's going to be and what
Yes,
it's going to look like. And I think that's important to get back into power. Yeah.
I agree.
Taking
100%.
control. Yeah.
So, what other lessons did you get from your father that you could share with the audience today about like how to be in your power?
Yeah, I
Your
think
grandfather, I'm sorry, not your father.
I also learned a lot about, actually, I had this other quite amazing experience that I want to tell you about.
Please, I love
Because,
it.
yeah, it was actually a state of expanded consciousness, really. And it was in more or less full waking state, but I was drifting into a trance state. So what happened is I was coming back home from work, long day of work, and I had a little bit of a headache behind the eyes and in the third eye area. So I was putting a pot of spaghetti on the stove because I thought, okay, let's have some spaghetti. And while the spaghetti are cooking, I can just, lie down on the sofa and just try to relax this area a little bit. So that's what I thought I was doing. So I was lying down and tried to relax my third eye area. And then I drifted into some kind of a trance state. And when I woke up from this trance state, I had this remembrance or memory or download. It's very difficult to explain that because it was such a different way of perceiving things because it
Mhm.
was non-linear. And so I remembered seeing from above actually a quite horrible war scene. So I was seeing a village, and I know it was a village in France, and it was a medieval village. So it didn't have a proper wall around it. It was just, a non-fortified village with some straw around it. It
Mhm.
wasn't, that well fortified. And there was an army coming in, and it was, the village was run over by this army. And the interesting thing was, it was horrible scene. I was perceiving everything all at once. I was understanding everything. I was grasping the whole significance of the whole thing. I could zoom in, I could zoom out, and and like afterwards, I got the download in a more of a linear way to actually make sense of it. But I know I had a memory of how I perceived it, right? And I was just seeing that scene and that scene and that scene, and it was going all very quick. And at the same time, and I know they killed everyone in the village, or that was the thought that I had.
Mhm.
Um, no one could have survived that. But then the next moment, I saw a scene where I saw like a person, like a man with like a hooded person,
Like a cloak or something. Hmm.
cloak or something, holding a baby in his arms and just fleeing and trying to get away from the village. And I know these two had survived. And I actually immediately knew that this person is someone I know in my lifetime today. So, so that was really interesting. And but the most interesting thing is this was an absolutely horrible scene. And it was gruesome. And there was a certain sadness about it that had happened, but I was completely non-judgmental. And I was like a parent looks at their children that have done something, that they shouldn't have done. It was like this completely, and I was full of compassion. And that was the first time my soul showed me what compassion really feels like. And I absolutely know today what compassion is and what it isn't. That is nothing to do with empathy. It has nothing to do with pity. It is such a powerful, powerful energy that moves through you and that has healing capabilities and everything. And the interesting thing is why I'm also telling you this story, because you asked what have I learned. Later on, I did a regression session. I had it done on me, and I was going back into a lifetime as a Highlander who fought for the British king and who was actually in the army, who had actually raided and killed everyone in this village. So, I have learned something about we have been on all sides,
Yes, we have.
and we have to learn, that picking sides, and killing each other is the dumbest thing you can do, but at the same time, being not judgmental about it because we're still learning. And this whole divine neutrality thing, you know, that I'm still learning about, that we
All of
all
us are.
learning about it. Yeah.
I'm really happy you brought up that point because it's true. We have been on all sides in different lives.
Yeah.
And we are here to learn and experience. That's why we're here. So I do want to explore the compassion a little bit more because I know for a fact this world is lacking in compassion. And
Yes.
yes, it's not empathy. It's
Mhm.
different. It's like to me, this is what compassion is. And I would love for you to share and elaborate on your own experience. But to me, compassion is having like a whole understanding for all sides, for all
Yes.
people, and not being judgmental
Yes.
and allowing to, like, you had that experience of when you're over that village and you could like have the bird's eye view where you're like the 30,000 foot view and then go down and
Mm.
see. And when you have that bird's eye view and you're not at that level, you have a different perspective of why this is happening, whether it's right or not. You're not necessarily in a judgmental state, but when you're down in the depths of it, it's really hard. So if
Yeah.
we, to me, if we have compassion, we can kind of like have this blanket view
Yeah.
and not be so focused on the micro levels.
Yeah. I totally agree. And there's another aspect as well, because you could potentially go into more detail and actually see the suffering that
Mm-hmm.
people experience. And because you're not denying the suffering, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
And you can actually hold this suffering, which is also what I do when I work with clients. I can hold the pain and the suffering and have compassion for it, but it does not, because that's what pity does or what empathy does. It does not prevent me from still being able to act, from still being able to potentially help this person or, assist this person in processing the whole thing. It also prevents me from shying away from it and saying, oh, I'm standing above it and I'm better than you, or I am, superior because I don't have that, that pain or the thing that you have. That's also not what it means. It's seeing each other as equals, and basically seeing, like, I think there's a definition, because compassion is something that has influenced psychotherapy today. There are even compassion-based psychotherapies today, and there are amazing psychology professors who actually do research on compassion, and they have defined compassion, or they have taken it from Eastern definitions of compassion, and part of it is you are seeing the other, the perceived other, suffering, and you understand that suffering is part of the shared human experience, and that's where you come in. You see yourself in the other person. You're not better, you're not worse, you're equal, and you share the common experience of suffering in this world, and you want to alleviate that. So that all belongs to compassion. So it's much more complex than, having pity or just, feeling what other people are feeling. Yeah.
That's beautifully said. And having pity keeps people in their suffering
Yes.
because we're
Yes.
keeping them in their story. And the
Yes.
goal is to hold the space, allow them to express what needs to be expressed, but move through it so that
Yes.
they don't stay there, because that is great suffering to be stuck in that.
Yeah. And if you have pity, you stand over someone and then you perpetuate these power over, power under constructs, right? Because
Interesting. Yeah.
right, you're feeling better than someone, and that's
Right.
all about power again.
Yeah, no, it's just guiding people so that they can get back on their feet, and having them guide us when we're not on our feet, because we
Yeah.
all go through it. It's
Yeah.
like you said earlier, it's a human experience for us to
Yeah.
have suffering
Exactly.
at certain points, and learn from it and move through it. So, I am loving this conversation. You have me in so many goosebumps. All your different experiences are phenomenal and powerful. Like, oh my gosh, your dream with your grandfather, that's really staying with me. And that goes right back to the compassion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I
Oh,
mean, there's lots of other stuff like that I could tell you about. I don't know. Yeah.
I
So,
so I think that the biggest thing is I really just understanding like all of these experiences brought you to where you're at today. And if you can share a little bit about like where you're at today, how you help people as a psychologist, I'm so sorry, a
as
psychologist.
psychologists, yes,
Okay,
as
as a
psychologists, yeah.
psychologist,
Yeah.
um, and as a spiritual mentor
Yeah, you could say so, or guide or
or
something. Yeah.
uh-huh.
Yeah. So, okay, what was the question again? Like
So
the
okay, so all these experiences
yes,
totally shifted your
yes.
perspective on life. And now, how are you integrating these experiences into your practice to help people?
Okay. I think like for me, it was a journey of getting into my purpose and finding out what it is and what the essence is. And compassion is a huge essence of it. Another one is reclamation.
Mhm.
And reclamation means like getting back into your power and, reclaiming who you really are. And so, because compassionate acceptance is also part of my purpose, I hold a container of acceptance so that people can actually feel accepted, maybe even for the first time in their lives, because unfortunately, acceptance is, as you said, so rare
Mhm.
in our society, so that they can actually explore who they really are. And if they start to explore that, they can actually explore their purpose. And, I know I have clients who actually struggle with self-worth, like with depression, with anxiety, as I did, as I used to do, right? But they have such amazing capabilities. They have amazing skills. They have amazing like potentials that they can't even see, and that breaks my heart, right? Because if they would actually light that up from within and find that and bring this into the world, the whole world would change. And
Yes.
that's what I see. Like, because I'm not a person who goes out there and basically goes into politics to change the systems or something. I'm not this kind of person, but I'm good at guiding people who are ready to do this, right? To ready to because we have enough narcissists in power positions in the world, and that has to change. And we have to empower those people who actually should be in leadership positions so that they can get out there and change things. And that's where I see where I am coming in.
Even I'm curious, even like people that maybe aren't necessarily like supposed to be in leadership, but just even having that light of their own self-worth and having that, if they can love themselves and know themselves, that
Yeah.
radiates out that compassion energy that we were just
Yeah.
talking about. That
Yeah.
changes the whole trajectory of their life, their loved ones'
Yeah.
lives, and it has an
Yeah.
impact on the world.
Yeah, it has. And also the other thing that I wanted to talk about, because like today I can really say I am as happy as I would have never imagined I could be. But the interesting thing is it is a happiness, it is a stability, it is a peace that absolutely comes from my purpose and comes from within. It is almost like an inner glow that is coming from my heart and that is pulling me forwards. So my like spirit is pulling me forwards into like more of my purpose. Not and I haven't figured out anything, right? I'm just showing up and
You're
spirit
being
is
in the
just pulling.
moment and accepting
Yeah,
it. Yes.
that's how I do it, right? And so so I'm pulled forwards by that. And it makes me this happy, content person that is, but that happiness is independent of whatever is going on in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if you're looking at the world nowadays, obviously you could feel anxious, you could feel resentful, angry, or sad, or whatever. And having being anxious of what the future holds for us, and that could basically completely get you in a free state. Like if you thinking about nervous system states, and we all are so overwhelmed with stuff, and then we getting into a freeze, and we can't do anything anymore, anything useful anymore. But if you have this pull from within, if you know who you are, what your role is, what your purpose is, then you're happy. You have this happiness, you have this contentment. And that doesn't mean you can't be angry. That doesn't mean you do not experience sadness or experience pain or have painful experiences. But there is this inner stability, this connection with your soul that always gets you going, and helps you basically do something with this inner urge that you're feeling, that you want to see change in the world, for example. And yeah.
It's so important. And I know I've gone through that transition of going from total anxiety, stress, worry, what if, to peace of mind of it's okay. It's all going to work itself out. And it feels so good to be in that state. And Dorothee, can you share with the listeners today how they can get a hold of you and this new class that you're just about to launch? So
Oh
if
yeah.
anybody's interested in working with you, they can sign up.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this project now, because I want to really put like my experiences and what I learned from my spiritual teachers about purpose and how you can find your purpose into a course. And it is a free 4-week course, online course, um, that runs from the 3rd of March to the 13th of March. So it's a whole month, and so there will be like a community aspect of it. There will be like some structured things, and there will probably some collective constellations as well, where we will do some healing work on the
Ooh, that's
common
going to be
block.
amazing.
Yes, exactly. So we will talk about like what prevents you from going into your purpose. What is it that usually prevents people from actually getting there, to find this, like to following the nudges of their soul to actually get into their purpose. And we probably will do some healing work as well on that. And yeah.
It sounds incredible. I may have to join. It just sounds so wonderful.
You
What a
have to join,
beautiful
absolutely.
experience. And I got to have a little one-on-one with you, and for the listeners, Dorothee is truly a brilliant woman that is so compassionate, and I know you shine so bright, and you are here to really help transform lives. So I'm so grateful for you and what you're doing. And thank you for offering this free course for my listeners and anybody else out there that is going to be taking it, because right now we need people to really step into their power and know who they are.
Exactly.
Like
I
we
think
are
it's time. Yeah.
unprecedented times right
Time for us to shine. And I'm not sure how you're feeling about it, but I'm actually so tired of seeing all these talented people hide somewhere,
now.
you
Yes.
know, in the
Uh-huh.
closet, or I don't know, because
Yes.
yeah,
I've always been one to hide. And back, it
yeah,
was
me
about two
too.
years ago, my clients, my guides were like, it's time to go, take that leap, take that leap. And they showed me like in they showed me in a trance state of me jumping off of a cliff, getting out of hiding and just free falling. And then two huge angels just lift me up. And so I don't ever hit the ground. Then they raise me up. But I had to take that free fall. And it
Amazing.
was scary,
What made you do it? What made you do it?
My guides made me do it, but I literally was like, okay, but they had been talking to me about for 4 years. It's time, it's time, it's time. And so finally they showed me the vision and I was like, okay, so I quit my job. I was writing for an astrologer. I did all her writing and copywriting and writing blogs and whatnot. And I just was like, all right, it's time. I'm doing it. And I started my own business and just went for it. I don't necessarily recommend. Yeah. I don't necessarily recommend that for everyone, but that's what I did.
Yeah. So, but for my nervous system, it had to be a little bit more gradual than that. But yeah, absolutely,
everyone. And that's important. That's part of knowing your soul and being in alignment with who you are, because everybody is different. So yeah. Dorothee, thank you so much for today, for joining me. And I'm excited to air this and share you with my audience. You are truly a gem in the world.
Thank you so much, Emily. And I love how you are, lighting up when you're talking about your purpose and when that is coming through.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, you know what? It feels good to help people.
Yeah.
People have helped me. I'm grateful to give back in return. So
it's a give and take because we're all one in the end.
Well said. Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Soulful Reminders podcast. I hope you're feeling inspired and empowered by the incredible insights we shared today. Remember, every story and lesson we explore is a beautiful reminder of the immense potential that resides within you. As you continue on your journey, take these soulful nudges with you. Embrace your true essence and actively work towards unlocking your full potential in every area of your life. If this episode resonated with you, I would love for you to subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up. And don't keep this goodness to yourself. Share it with others who could use this little reminder too. Until next time, keep shining your light. Remember, you're not alone in this journey. Together, we can uplift and inspire one another to live fully and authentically. You got this.